You'll never be caught needing to replenish your stash again when you subscribe to Hemper's monthly smoking boxes. Hemper's hands down the best place to stock up on your smoking supplies no matter the occasion. Curated with innovative and hand-selected products to ensure you're getting the absolute highest quality accessories for your smoking experience, Hemper's monthly smoking subscription service provides $100 plus in value for only $40. There's also the convenient options to receive every month, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually, and right now use promo code HEDGE10 to get started and receive 10% off Hemper's box or the XL box at hemper.com. Lifted Drinks. Join the party, skip the hangover. Created by hemp and cannabis lovers, Lifted is an amazing, tasty, non-alcoholic beverage created to improve any evening in or weekend out. Lifted is 100% hemp cannabis, 100% consistent, 100% of the time. We could ship anywhere in the U.S. Just add ice or mix it with your favorite beverage. Check them out at lifteddrinks.com. That's LYFTED drinks.com. Enter in radio to get a 20% discount at checkout. You must be 21 or over to join the party and skip the hangover.
It's only entertainment.
Welcome back to The Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, capital markets analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today we've got Raymond Chang. He is the chairman and CEO of Agrify on NASDAQ under ticker symbol AGFY. Raymond, thanks for being with us at The Talking Hedge.
Thank you, Josh, for inviting me to your show. Really much appreciated.
I appreciate you being here. The show was maybe a little bit different. I try not to do any research on companies so that I can learn with the audience. So maybe you can give us a little elevator pitch on what Agrify is.
So Josh, I think right now, obviously, the cannabis industry is going through, probably a lot of changes, and that's probably even an understatement. But I've always believed that in order for the industry to really get to the next level, we really need to basically focus on being able to produce good quality cannabis products consistently, right? And at the lowest cost possible, right? So basically it's important, again, it's all about consistency. It's all about basically being able to produce the best quality products and do so at the lowest possible cost, right? So, our solutions basically enables our customers to achieve those things. And it's a total integrated solutions, pretty much like, an Apple that's basically is an end-to-end turnkey solutions that allows the cultivators to achieve the highest consistency, quality, and also being able to produce the maximum yield at the lowest possible costs.
Okay. How are you generating your revenue?
So, we have really two go-to-market strategies. A lot of the well-capitalized companies will show up and basically buy our equipment, and we sell the equipment solutions. Basically we would have margin on that, but we would also have an ongoing recurring SaaS revenue because our equipment's basically it's enabled by the smart AI software behind it, right? So we would have basically the ongoing SaaS revenue. But in addition to that, seeing that access to capital in this market it's being super difficult. So we have what we call the total turnkey solutions, where we offer our partners really a turnkey solution where we come in and help them to build out the entire facility. And we're in it for 10 years. And basically we get paid on a per pound basis. So it's basically, putting our money on the line to basically, get extraordinary returns, and it is all based on success, basis. So we get, we charge $600 per pound for 10 years.
Okay. And are these machines that you have that you're leasing, is it for all product SKUs? Is it just for flower? Are you also doing beverages, edibles, concentrates, pre-rolls? What types of machines are you leasing?
Yeah, so we started out on the cultivation side. So we do have cultivation solutions, but we also basically acquire 4 separate extraction companies in the last 6 months. So now we're basically enabling both the cultivation as well as the extraction side of the equation. So it's truly an end-to-end solution provider. And just a little bit on the cultivation side, right? So our solution is unique because typically, in most of the facilities, you'll probably have 10 to 12 different rooms, and they're probably all about 3,000-4,000 square feet in sizes. And the challenge with the traditional grow setup is you're bound to have what we call environmental pockets, right? Imagine a room of 3,000 to 4,000 square feet, temperature differential depending on how the HVAC system is set up. You're going to have at least 3 to 4 degree temperature differential. Most of the time, people hang these really loud fans on the side of the walls. So obviously, if your plant's next to it, then you get pretty decent airflow. But obviously, the ones that are in the middle, terrible airflow. Light penetration are not going to be the same because they're all kind of 4x4 footprints, but obviously there are gaps in between. And then you also have huge biosecurity risk because all it takes is one potential plant disease, and it was basically just spread like wildfire, and then the next thing you know, everything is contaminated, right? So basically we took on that challenge, and what we decided to do is, instead of having to basically divide up a facility into multiple grow rooms, we keep that open. Feet by 9 feet tall, and we can really control the environment inside of that box. So for example, temperature, we can get down to 0.5 degrees Celsius accurately at all time. If you want it exactly at 2 VPD, that's exactly what we deliver, right? So basically we shrink down the footprints and really provide a very tight environmental control. And then these boxes then become like Lego boxes, and you can stack them up. So you don't lose any vertical spaces, right? So basically it's like a room full of grow chambers. Every single one of them is individually controlled. So you can have, 25 different strains and under different grow environments. And basically you can grow them to perfection every single time, right? That's how we basically differentiate against the competitors, is instead of basically growing in an average, kind of grow environment for 25 different strains, and you're not really dialed in or optimized for any of them, we basically shrink down the real estate and really have tight control over that. But at the same time, we also pack it inside of a big facility, so we have the highest yield, highest consistency, and highest quality at the lowest possible costs.
That's an interesting layout, Raymond. What was the strategy behind that? Because you wanted to do small batch in order to have, quote unquote, better quality, or was it a result of maybe a lack of AI's ability to provide preventative risks for the plants that were on the inside?
It's really a combination of both, right? Because we know that, right now there's just no way to basically control the environment when you are really honestly beyond kind of a 200, 300, 400 square feet, right? I mean, typically like in even, in my house, for example, upstairs, we, couple thousand square feet, you have one thermostat. And, normally my room is like 2 degrees higher than my daughter's room because she doesn't get any sun in her room. Right. So the traditional HVAC system is just not designed that way. Right. Because normally, even if you set a temperature of 68 degrees, you bring it down to 66 and it slowly stratifies, and then it basically restart again when it hits 70. Right. So it's basically, it just wasn't designed, honestly, for microclimate control. So basically knowing that deficiencies, right? So we shrink down the real estate and basically really be able to provide the best grow environment. And then on top of that, what I realized is this, right? Most of the cultivation facility, they like to maybe play around with 25, 30 different strains. And the truth of the matter is every single strain deserves its own special grow recipe. Like, for example, you want to grow purple punch. We now know, like, for example, on day 57, for example, you want to maybe intensify the red spectrum because that red spectrum is what gives a nice purple color at the end. But if you actually grow lemon haze, you don't need that, right? And if you're actually growing it for oil, it's actually different from growing for dry flower, right? So again, depending on what you want to produce, and like even if you want to push like the minor cannabinoid, right? If you want to push for CBN, you want to push for CBG, actually, it may actually require a different grow recipe, right? So basically, what we do is really just to provide a smaller footprint for the cultivators to really kind of be able to do real crop steering to really kind of push for the max. Right. So that's really kind of the strategy behind, our approach.
Do you also provide SOPs? I would imagine that having the standard operating procedures would be important. I recently bought a few ounces on 420. I run around about 20 stores and check out the scene every year. 1 ounce I got back had an overabundance amount of seeds. So that was an issue. They were probably growing too long. Another nug looked like somebody stepped on it and they smashed perlite. And so I saw like perlite in there. So that's an issue. I don't know if AI could pick that up. Obviously, the human that packaged it or whatever didn't see it. Quality control wasn't there. Another nug from an ounce that I bought, I split it open because it just looked bad. It looked wrong. And there was a massive amount of spider mites in there. So I didn't know if the white was, I didn't know what the white was initially. So I looked under a microscope and you could see the dead spider mites in there. A lot of issues that people don't know what they're doing or aren't doing it right. Do you guys provide the SOPs in order for people to do it right?
Absolutely. So basically, the AI records data, on a minute by minute basis, right? And what we actually help our cultivation partner is we help them to basically perfect the grow recipe, right? So for example, day one, temperature needs to be at Y, humidity needs to be at X. You fertigate and irrigate in certain time, certain schedule, certain drip per meter per second, airflow needs to be at, whatever, right? So basically you perfect that grow recipe, right? On a minute by minute basis. And once that recipe is perfected, then basically the system just takes it over. Our units are basically 95% of the time operated with curtains down. We don't want you to touch it. We just want basically let the environment just control. And the only time the curtains would come up is there's actually a plant touching task that is required, right? The rest of the time, the curtains are completely down, right? And that's the reason why, there was a study that was done. Basically they had 25 different master growers growing the same exact strain, right? And the THC was basically somewhere between 15 to 28%, even though it's the same exact mother with the same clone. Mm. But basically the variation was humongous, right? But in the last 6 batches, right, for example, lemon haze, we see, for example, THC variation in less than 1%, right? Last 6 batches of production. Right. So basically it's all between kind of a 28 to 29%. So maybe 28.2 on the low side and 28.8 on the high side. But we get that level of consistency, right? So it's so important because what we want to do is basically let the consumers, right, have the same experience every single time. And especially when we're thinking about for medicinal usage, right? You want to let basically the doctor be able to prescribe very accurately, right? The exact amount of basically dosage that the patient should undertake.
With that quality control and that consistency, I would imagine there's a lot of oversight, regulations, and everything else that goes in with that. I see a lot of times I'll go to a store and they don't have something in. Maybe something happened with spider mites. I don't know. Blue Dream, I think, is a perfect example of what you were describing and how that's kind of, I use the word bastardized. I don't know why. It just feel like what I liked back in the day is no longer what it is. And they just mess with it a lot along the way. So to keep something consistent, even like an old school Acapulco Gold or a White Widow, or bringing those genetics back and keeping it constant and consistent, not only is the FDA and the pharmaceutical industry going to enjoy that, but I think a lot of consumers that want that repeated experience and know what to expect. I know a lot of people would quit alcohol if cannabis was consistent. If they had a brand and strain and everything consistent, they would switch, but they just don't yet. So all of those are still an issue. You're clearly working on trying to resolve that. I'm curious if you're going to get in the world of retail. Obviously, that would affect your ability to be on NASDAQ if you did become plant touching, but there are companies like Maramed that started off consulting and got into licenses and now are a multi-state operator. Does it intrigue you? Do you have FOMO at all with multi-state operators or retail?
Yeah, I mean, basically, we announced a couple of partnerships with the large MSOs. Curaleaf is one of our partners. We're also working with Greenlights. And then we're engaging with a bunch of other, MSOs. So, what we actually bring to the table for them, again, is, with these boxes, we would help to allow them to be able to have the same exact consistency of production across different state borderlines, and not relying on, for example, the master growers, because, every facility is built very differently. When you actually grow in the open environment, you just have the tendency of wanting to touch the plants when you don't really necessarily have to, right? And then when the bigger the system gets, the more complicated it is, but the easier it is to break down, right? So again, reducing that footprint, letting the system to take over, it just helps to ensure much higher consistency in the long run.
I would imagine that would add a lot of compliance if you did become vertically integrated in plant touching and everything else. Being publicly traded is probably enough from a compliance standpoint. I am curious if you don't mind talking about how that progress went. A lot of companies were pitching, to get seed capital or angel investors. What was your journey from the time you first pitched to when you went public on NASDAQ? Can you kind of explain that process in raising capital and what that was like? Because the environment now is deteriorated significantly. Maybe you can kind of, make our days better by telling us how it was.
Sure. So Josh, I got into the industry because, my mother-in-law was a cancer patient. And I saw really the medicinal benefits of cannabis through her. But one thing I also noticed was that, there were days that she was so good, after the consumption. And then there were also days where basically it didn't help her at all. So I realized that, obviously the products were not consistent. So in any case, I went out to MJ Biz in 2018 and basically just, walked the floor, not knowing anybody there. And I came across, this, now, what it is, Agrify, the predecessor of Agrify. And basically what really intrigued by the technology, it wasn't quite where we are today, but it was, had the bone behind it. So I acquired the company, took majority control of the company in towards the end of 2019, with, just basically a few friends. And then 2019, after I took over, basically we expanded the operations more. And then we went public on NASDAQ in 2021. And so when I took over the company, it was, a very small company, maybe revenues of less than 10 million. Last year in 2021, we did about a little bit over 60. And then this year, we're basically looking to do about, $140 million of, revenue. So it's been a very, high, tremendous growth in our business. So that's kind of in my journey is a little bit different. Like this wasn't a company that I founded. It was a company that I discovered and took control. And then, but, obviously, basically built the team to really kind of, got it from kind of a small startup to, now a public listed company on NASDAQ.
Yeah, over 10x. That's not bad. Was a lot of that through your mergers and acquisitions? How did you get that growth?
Yeah, out of the 140 million that we will be doing, about 60 million plus it's our extraction business, and that's basically all through acquisition. And then the rest of the remaining $80+ million is our cultivation revenue. So I think even on the cultivation side, went from 10 to now 80, it's still very significant growth. But we did also pile on top, the extraction revenues, which basically came through the acquisition.
It's fairly easy to find out Agrify's market cap or valuation being publicly traded, but how do you make that decision when you're making acquisitions or trying to merge with another company? What valuation metrics do you use, and how do you come up with whether or not it's accretive?
Yeah, so there are certain criteria that we look for, when we decide to acquire companies, right? So we decided to go into the extraction side because obviously, we see industry shifts, going from basically just smokable flowers to now more concentrated products. And obviously extraction is a very sort of key piece of all that. So we made a decision to go into extraction. And then, the more I learned, I realized that, oh, wow, there's different extraction methods, right? So essentially, we kind of looked at different extraction methods and then went after the number one player in each of those subsegments, right? So we acquired the number one player in hydrocarbon, which is precision extraction. We acquired the number one player in solventless extraction, which is pure pressure. We acquired the number one distillation equipment provider, which is Lab Society, and then also basically Cascade is known for its the oven, right? So basically we just kind of said, all right, this is what completes the extraction. We need to have all these different technologies, and then basically we just went after the number one player in each of those. And because we wanted really just to have the leading technology, we wanted to basically have the leading edge sort of market penetration. And then also we want to also make sure that financially is also accretive as well. So so that's kind of like our criteria. And in terms of valuation for these companies, obviously we looked at market benchmark and all that. Now obviously the every company is trading down. So when in a down environment like this, right now companies are trading at sometimes even less than 1x revenue. And, that's where we are. When we acquire these companies, I think basically it was maybe the slightly higher trading multiples, but, you just kind of have to always benchmark against what the market commands.
I like asking the same question and getting different responses. Do you think that valuation will be decoupled with federal legalization, or is it going to continue to move in momentum with news?
I think that right now I just came back from Jeffrey's conference in New York City yesterday, and I can tell you this is probably the most sort of concerned and pessimistic investor conference I've been for a while. I think the industry is due for a major shakeup. Right. There's been just, maybe just oversupply, and honestly, too many players, right? A lot of companies are not well capitalized. Everybody thought this was just kind of a green rush and kind of got into it without really figuring out, and honestly, like growing cannabis and doing it right is actually very difficult. Right. So I think I don't think we're anywhere near the bottom yet. I think there will be probably more consolidation and restructuring and shakeup in the industry. And, hopefully we'll be a consolidator. I think we certainly have the balance sheets and being a public listed company, hopefully that would give us an edge. But I do expect that companies just need to figure it out, because this is like very similar, like all the other industry. Like we need to somehow get to profitability, right? You can't just keep borrowing money or raising money to sustain the industry. We got to basically find a business model that actually eventually will make money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's overdue. I think Gary Vaynerchuk or Gary V had said that he's waiting for the next recession to get rid of all of the noise, as he calls it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of altruistic individuals not paying themselves, and maybe they should kind of get out of the way if they don't have a revenue model that's actually generating profit by now. But you will see consolidation and eventually capitulation from that forced forced turnover, mergers, whatever. Maybe somebody will come up with co-op models to try to survive, but I think the future is going to be grim for those who are unaware that they have been failing, that they have been quote unquote bankrupt and just didn't know it yet. I think it's going to slap them in the face pretty soon. That's my prediction. It sounds like that's kind of your crystal ball prediction too, wondering what else you're anticipating. I think vertical integrated agriculture is going to be taking off, artificial intelligence and machine learning to look at what's happening with the environment, to know whether it's the environmental controls or if it's the nutrient deficiencies. I'm wondering if soil, aeroponics, hydroponics are going to be the best. What does your crystal ball prediction say for the industry?
Yeah, I think Josh, you everything you said, I think, basically we're paying attention, we're working on them. For example, right now, we are installing cameras in our, vertical farming units, our VFUs. So instead of basically waiting, right, for the problems to occur, we're using AI, visual intelligence to detect some early plant abnormalities, right? So we don't have to wait until it's too late, right? We're basically installing sensors, right? More and more sensors to make sure that the environment in which the plants are being cultivated is the right one, right? We are also basically trying to figure out how we could actually make the entire SOP more efficient, productivity being higher. So for example, right now, one of the things that we're looking at is the drying methods, right? Because every facility, uses 20% of the facility just hanging the plants upside down, and for 2 weeks time to dry the flowers. There's got to be a better way, right, to reduce that real estate footprint and make that process more efficient, right? So again, we're at the end of the day, like what we want to do is use technology, use data to basically help our cultivators to have better return on investment, i.e., increasing yield, reducing cost, but at the same time being able to produce the most consistent, good quality flowers.
Anything else you want to address to any skeptical investors, or anything you want to point out at this point?
Yeah, I think for us right now, obviously there's a lot of also doubters out there, because I don't think anyone doesn't like our business model, but I think it's sometimes when you have a business model that's also kind of too good to be true, it just kind of like puts a lot of doubts in people's mind. But I think what the good news is that we will be bringing 3 additional facilities up in the next this quarter and also beginning of Q3. So we're going to have a lot more data points to basically prove out our business model. And so I think people are going to realize very soon, once they see the nice recurring SaaS and production revenues, then they're going to realize that this is all really coming together. And I think we will see a reversal of trend at that point.
Yeah, I know what it's like to be too good to be true. When our Bitcoin investment got 876% last year, people are like, that's too good to be true. But if you have historical and you can kind of keep going back and keep showing them over and over again, eventually people will come around. So if people do want to come back around and find out where you're at, obviously you're on NASDAQ, ticker symbol AGFY. Where else are you at? Agrify.com or?
Yeah, agrify.com is our, URL. And obviously, we also, did acquire Precision, Cascade, Lab Society, and Pure Pressure as well. So again, we're offering different extraction solutions, and we're doing a kind of an integration of all these brands. But in the meantime, if you are interested in any of our extraction solutions, basically they're also available on their own websites as well.
So we'll put the links in the show notes, as well as Raymond Chang's LinkedIn. If you want to bug him on LinkedIn, you can do that as well. But I think with that, we're going to have to roll this one up. So I want to thank my guest, Raymond Chang, Chairman, CEO of Agrify. Raymond, thanks again for being with us at the Talking Hedge.
Thank you, Josh, for the opportunity. Very much appreciated.
Appreciate it as well. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.
I'm Larry Mishkin, I'd like to invite you to join Jim, Marty, and me on our weekly podcast, The Deadhead Cannabis Show. Each week we explore the latest cannabis and jam band news and reminisce with other cannabis industry deadheads and jam band aficionados about the great musical acts that we've seen and heard. Check out a new episode every Monday at mjbulls.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.